yeah, I've been waiting for this segment a long time because we are starting to see signs of pre-pandemic life resuming, starting to go back to work. Restaurants are reopening, concerts are happening again, sporting events. And to do all of this as safely as possible, a lot of provinces have implemented vaccine mandates, and that means requiring proof of vaccination to access certain public spaces.
Entering into this uncharted territory has raised a lot of legal questions. Here to answer ours is lawyer Lily Coodin. Welcome back.
Hi.
It's great to see you. So let's get right into this, Lily. The implementation of vaccine mandates has led some people to question whether or not they violate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. What's the legal answer to that?
It's a great question. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms is meant to protect us from being discriminated against on grounds like our religious beliefs. But the Charter does not apply in every context. In fact, it only applies when you're dealing with the government or a government entity. So not if you're in a coffee shop talking with a friend or if you're dealing with a private company. So when it comes to vaccine mandates, some people have questioned whether they are a violation of their charter rights, and it's often phrased as a religious freedoms argument. We can't say for sure in every context, but the indications we have so far are that this is very unlikely to be seen as a charter violation. In order to show that your religious freedoms have been violated, you have to establish a connection between the vaccine mandate and your actual religious beliefs, which is not that easy to show. Even if you can establish that connection, the question then becomes, is this violation justifiable? I will remind everyone that we are in the midst of the greatest public health crisis we've seen in 100 years. So chances are that even if there is some violation found, it will be justifiable on the basis of the circumstances we find ourselves in.
Yeah, hot button. Here's another hot button question for you. Employers mandating vaccines among their employees. So ever since vaccines became available, this has been something everybody's been tossing about. And at first, it really seemed kind of unclear how many employers were requiring their staff to get the vaccine. So here's the question. Is it legal for an employer to mandate the vaccine? And if you choose not to get vaccinated as an employee, what happens to you? What can happen to you?
You're exactly right. This is one case where we see people's individual choices come up against what is for the greater good. And there are so many of these cases that have come before the courts, and by and large, they have found that vaccine mandates are legal. They are allowable. The important thing to remember is that employers have an obligation to provide a safe and healthy work environment for their employees. And vaccines against COVID-19 are this unbelievable tool that stops the spread of COVID-19. So for health and safety reasons, as well as for liability reasons, employers don't want their staff coming to work and getting sick and spreading COVID-19 to their vulnerable household members. So for all of these reasons, these policies are justifiable in many cases. Now, if you are an employee who is subject to a vaccine mandate and you choose not to get vaccinated, what will happen will depend on your specific company and your specific industry. We've seen healthcare workers, people who work with vulnerable populations who are required to get vaccinated in BC and Ontario who have been suspended from their jobs for refusing to get vaccinated by the deadline. So you could find yourself on leave without pay. You could end up getting terminated with or without cause. In limited circumstances, there may be accommodations available if you work by yourself, you never encounter another human being. But again, it will really depend on what company you're working for and what the policy is in place.
There's a small percentage of people who can't get the vaccine for medical reasons. So what are the medical exemptions and what are the penalties for doctors who are giving out exemptions that aren't actually legit?
Yeah, the medical exemptions from COVID-19 vaccines are meant to be interpreted very narrowly. So it's not like, getting a note to get out of gym class because you don't want to play volleyball. It's supposed to be that you are either allergic to one of the components in a vaccine or you have had a first dose and there was some sort of medical episode that would preclude your getting the second dose. And really that is supposed to be it. When it comes to doctors, we have seen some who have been perhaps a little bit too liberal in giving out medical exemption notes. in Ontario, we recently saw 2 doctors who were barred from writing notes. And not only were they barred, they had to put a sign up in their clinic saying that they couldn't write notes. That was visible on, virtual visits as well. So doctors are definitely subject to punishment through their regulatory body, their respective College of Physicians and Surgeons. And as they keep doing this, we are likely to see more and more punishments.
Okay, let's move over to businesses now, Lily. And businesses in many parts of this country are now requiring proof of vaccination for any of their customers coming into their places of business. So are there any places, though, where those vaccines cannot be mandated? And then the flip side is, if you are a business or you are a customer and you are not complying with the vaccine mandates, what could happen?
Yeah, so where we have a so-called vaccine passport system, we've generally seen it in high-risk settings. So places where you would be indoors, like a restaurant or a movie theater, and potentially unmasked. And we've also seen them in settings that are non-essential. So it's not necessary for you to go eat in a restaurant or for you to go to the movies, let's say. Where we haven't seen them is in essential places like a grocery store, a doctor's office. We don't want to prevent anyone from getting medical care or buying toilet paper, but it really is these high-risk, non-essential settings where we're seeing them more and more. And it does place an onus on businesses. They're supposed to be checking the vaccination status of everyone who comes in, and there are stiff penalties for if they aren't doing that. In BC, businesses could be fined, $2,300. In Ontario, the fines go up to $10 million, which is very, very high. But for customers as well, in BC, you could be fined, almost $600. In Manitoba, almost $1,300. So these are really serious things. You don't want to find yourself on the wrong side of a fine. So you've got to make sure that you're complying with these requirements where they are in place.
Okay, so let's go there a little further, because I know personally several stories of people faking their vaccine certificates. They are completely unvaccinated. They have falsified a vaccine certificate. I'm not telling on them yet, but if they get caught, what could happen?
Well, there's a professional athlete who did this.
You're right.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Lily?
Yeah, definitely not recommended. And I always think it's funny, people who are so mad about having to give their employer their private information, but they're willing to send all of their personal information to some dude over the internet who gets paid in Bitcoin to produce a fake vaccine certificate. So you really have to be thinking about what you're worried about here. So again, you could be in a lot of trouble. In Ontario, it's not only a fine of up to $10,000, but you could also find yourself with a jail sentence of up to a year. So it is very serious. You could also, there is a question of identity theft. I'm always telling everyone to protect their private information. But there's also some serious ethical problems with pretending to be vaccinated, potentially, infecting other people, not to mention yourself. So really not recommended, not a good look for anyone.
Okay, Lily, really quickly, a final question about families and especially parents who are divorced and disagree on vaccinating their kids. What happens then?
Yeah, as if divorced parents don't have enough to fight about in the middle of a pandemic, there is this question of vaccines that we will no doubt see more and more as vaccines hopefully get approved for younger kids. So courts have shown that they will always look at what is in the best interest of the child. And given that there is very clear public health guidance on the issue in favor of vaccination, you will be hard-pressed to find a judge who will side with a parent who is against vaccination. In other words, if you end up going to court, chances are the judge is going to side with the parent who wants their child vaccinated. We saw that happen in Saskatchewan. In Quebec recently, a 12-year-old child himself went to court because his father didn't want to sign his consent form. And again, the court sided with the party that wanted vaccination.
Lawyer Lily, you're always so great with the facts. Thank you so much for being here today. And don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.